Think stylish, glamorous roadsters, and you're probably thinking Italy with the likes of Alfa Romeo or Maserati. Maybe you're thinking Britain with Jaguar and Aston Martin. But it's easy to forget that the most successful, the longest lived, and arguably the most iconic, big, long-legged roadster for grand touring ever was German, the Mercedes SL. The R107 generation was arguably the best SL. It was the longest lived and it sold the most. These days it's regarded as one of Mercedes' all-time greats. So what's it like to drive? Courtesy of Hobbs Parker Car Auctions, we're going to take this really early 350 SL for a drive in this gorgeous weather and find out. But first, our friends at Lancaster Insurance are running monthly giveaways. You can win all sorts, from experience days to tools, restaurant vouchers and tech. So click the link below at the end of the video to enter their latest competition. America has a massive influence on European car makers. The fact is, if your car does well stateside, that's an enormous market share globally that you'd have to sell well in most of Europe to match. The W113 SL, this car's predecessor, or Pagoda if you'd rather, was an American success story for Mercedes. America loved the SL's classy, elegant styling and of course its drop-top experience. 40% of W113 production went stateside. So, keen to repeat that success, Mercedes decided to target its successor, what would be known as the R107, at America as well. For a start, they needed to make it bigger, because in America, bigger is more luxurious, bigger is better. So they based the new SL on the W114 saloon platform. But therein lied a problem, because the W114 only came with 6-cylinder engines available, and Americans, they like a big V8. So Mercedes pinched a couple of V8s from the larger W108 saloon to pop into it. The new SL then will be bigger, wider, and a damn sight more powerful than its predecessor. The American market had a lot of legislation for imported cars come the 1970s, and whereas some manufacturers had to awkwardly engineer them in after release to try and sell cars stateside, Mercedes planned in the US market requirements for the R107 SL from the beginning. US market cars, rather than the rectangular headlights that we got in Europe, had 4 circular lights. The front and rear bumpers were 8 inches longer on US spec cars. What's more, those V8s in the American SLs were lower compression. Combine that with Bosch fuel injection to make them as efficient and pollute as little as possible for that vital American emissions concern. And the fuel injection wasn't the only bit of high tech in the R107. In fact, for 1971, this was a hugely advanced car. Mercedes were focusing particularly on safety. I'll give you some examples. The R107 has got multiple layers of steel in the floor, and that means it's got a definite crumple zone designed to fold up and protect the occupants in the event of an accident. The fuel tank was placed above the rear axle to hopefully protect it in the event of a rear-end collision. There are multiple extra bracing layers of steel in the A-pillars, so they hopefully don't crush and injure anyone inside the car if it were to roll over. And even the steering wheel is safer. It's a nice padded leather, so if you do fly forward and headbutt it in an accident, hopefully you shouldn't injure yourself. ABS was offered on the R107 from 1980, and from 1982 you could have a driver's airbag as well. This was an incredibly safe car for its day, and that's not necessarily what you think of when you think of a glamorous convertible. And of course, because this is a Mercedes from Mercedes' peak era, the R107 is fantastically well engineered and solidly built. The doors shut with that nice solid thud, every switch clonks and clicks perfectly even after all these years, and you do get a sense that this is utterly unburstable compared to the slightly fragile Alfas, Maseratis and Jaguars that this car would have been compared to. In fact, it was so solid that in the factory, the R107 was nicknamed the Panzer Tank. These cars were designed to last 250,000 miles or more and not really have a waver. And to be honest, driving this one today with just under 100,000 miles, it feels factory fresh. Offering V8s had been key to the R107 being pitched at America, but Mercedes acknowledged that not everyone wanted or needed such a massive engine. So from 1972, the 280 SL was available with a more frugal 2.8 litre straight 6. But if the normal V8s weren't quite enough for you, from 1974 you could have the 560 SL with a 5 litre V8. But to be honest, it's just as well Mercedes sought the rally stages for the R107 rather than the racetracks, because as a handling car on tarmac, it falls a bit short, to be honest. Double wishbone front and semi-trailing our rear suspension were tweaked and set up more for comfort. This is meant to be a cruiser, again, for that American market. And that means that despite that V8 power, which you've still got plenty of in a 350 like this one, you are not going to be attacking your favourite twisty road in an R107. You've got this really dead, numb-feeling steering box with a fair amount of play in it. That means you don't really know what the front wheels are doing, and a not inconsiderable amount of body roll. You really do feel like you're going to end up on the passenger seat. It's a bit of a wafty, floaty barge. But here's the thing, how often are you actually attacking a B road in a comfortable GT car? More often than not, you're doing this, pootling along, just wanting comfort. And for driving at 3/10 rather than, say, 7 or 8, the R107 is a joy. That light steering means you can drive it one-handed with your arm up on the window. That V8 might not be the fastest in the world, 0 to 60 takes a leisurely 10 seconds, but the torque means it will just effortlessly pull itself along. And the ride, for all that wallowy cornering, suddenly it all seems a worthwhile trade-off. This thing soaks up the bumps, it's an effortless cruiser, and on a day like today, there are few cars that will match an R107. It might not have been the sportiest car on the market, but it had the comfort, the style, the glamour, that unburstable Mercedes feel to it, and that lovely V8 soundtrack. And being a Mercedes, they didn't stand still. They kept developing it throughout its life to keep it current. In 1980, the R107 got the interior from the S-Class to give it a fresh feel to it, and a gentle facelift comprising of a new aluminium bonnet and a front chin spoiler, again to freshen it up. And as if the SL wasn't stylish and classy and lustworthy enough, it then became trendy. An appearance in American Gigolo made it the must-have item for Hollywood celebrities. Donna Summers, Bruce Lee, even Madonna have all owned R107 SLs. But as a result, if you wanted it, you were going to pay for it. By the mid-70s, a middle-of-the-range SL would have cost what in today's money equates to around £90,000. But it mattered not. This remained the car to have, the car to be seen in, and it sold immensely well. Over its life, the R107 sold 237,000 units between the Roadster like this one and the SLC Coupe. Not to mention, apart from the G-Wagen, the R107 is the longest-lived single Mercedes model ever. It lasted from 1971 until late 1989, an 18-year life. If you needed proof that the 70s was peak Mercedes, the R107 defines it perfectly. It's well made, indestructibly reliable, it's classy, stylish, comfortable, practical, plenty fast enough, and it really does fit in anywhere. This is a car that appeals to anyone. And what's more, prices are once again on the up. The days of getting a roadworthy R107 for 4 figures are pretty much behind us now. So once again, this car is the hot ticket. It's the car to be seen in. Whether you want a classy GT car to enjoy some gorgeous summer weather with, or you just want to look and feel a bit like a star, you want to get yourself this 3-pointed star. Aww.
This video is proudly sponsored by Lancaster Insurance. Give them a call on 01480 400 889 for an insurance quote on your classic car. And don't forget to click the link below to enter their latest competition.